The iron gates of the Hale mansion had claimed another victim. Sophia Martinez watched from across the street as the third housekeeper this week stumbled down the curved driveway, mascara streaking her cheeks like war paint. The woman clutched a small suitcase and what looked like a crumpled termination letter, her designer uniform already wrinkled from whatever hell she'd endured inside those glass walls. 72 hours, Sophia muttered, checking her watch. Right on schedule. She'd been studying this place for weeks, timing the exits, cataloging the broken staff members who emerged like refugees from some corporate battlefield. The mansion, perched above Sunset Boulevard like a modern fortress, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces that seemed designed to repel human warmth. Victor Hale had a reputation that preceded him through every staffing agency in Los Angeles. Billionaire, tech mogul, widower, professional soul crusher. The man who'd revolutionized home security systems by apparently securing his own heart in an impenetrable vault. Sophia's phone buzzed. A text from her younger sister Maya. Surgery moved up to next Friday. Insurance covering 60%. Still need? $1 for okay. The number hit her chest like a physical blow. $40,000. Maya's heart condition had been getting worse, and the experimental procedure was their last shot. Sophia had already maxed out 3 credit cards, sold everything of value she owned, and picked up every extra shift she could find. This impossible job that chewed up experienced housekeepers and spat them out like gum, was the only thing standing between her sister and a death sentence. She squared her shoulders and marched toward the intercom. The device crackled to life. Before she could even press the button, no walk-ins. Agency referrals only. The voice was crisp, cold, and definitely not interested in conversation. Good thing I'm not walking in then, Sophia replied, tilting her chin up toward the camera she knew was watching. I'm Sophia Martinez from Elite Staffing Solutions. Requested immediate placement. A pause, long enough for her to wonder if she'd just blown her only chance. The last 3 didn't make it past lunch. The last 3 weren't me. Another pause. Then the gate began its slow, reluctant swing. Open. The driveway stretched ahead like a gauntlet, lined with hedges so perfectly manicured they looked artificial. The mansion itself rose from the landscape like something that had crash-landed from a more sterile future. Glass panels reflected the gray afternoon sky, making it impossible to see inside. Sophia had cleaned plenty of rich people's houses. She'd scrubbed toilets for tech bros who made more in a day than she saw in a year. She'd organized walk-in closets bigger than her apartment. But this felt different. This felt like walking into a tomb. A woman in black met her at the front door. No smile, no greeting, just a clipboard. And the kind of expression that suggested smiling was against company policy. Mrs. Henderson House. Manager, you'll meet Mr. Hale directly. 3rd floor. Don't touch anything. The interior was a masterclass in expensive emptiness. White marble floors stretched beneath soaring ceilings. Abstract art hung on walls like accusatory stares. Everything was perfect, pristine, and completely devoid of life. The cameras tracked her movement from every corner. Red lights blinked like mechanical eyes, recording her every step for analysis. Sophia resisted the urge to wave. The elevator whisked her to the 3rd floor in silence. She stepped into a hallway that felt more like a corporate corridor than part of someone's home. One door stood open at the end. Victor Hale sat behind a glass desk that could have doubled as a landing strip. He didn't look up when she entered. His attention focused on multiple monitors displaying what looked like security feeds and stock reports. His dark hair was perfectly styled. His suit probably cost more than her car, and his jawline could have been carved by someone who charged by the angle. He was also younger than she'd expected. Maybe 35, with the kind of controlled stillness that came from years of practice at not feeling anything. You're 14 minutes late, he said. Without lifting his eyes, traffic was murder. Apparently there's this thing called rush hour that got his attention. His gaze snapped up, and Sophia felt the full force of eyes that were the color of winter storms. They were measuring, calculating, dissecting her like a specimen under a microscope. I don't tolerate sarcasm. Good thing I wasn't being sarcastic. I was being factual with a side of personality. Something flickered across his features. Surprise, annoyance. But it was gone too quickly to tell. The previous housekeepers lasted an average of 2.3 days. What makes you think you'll be different? Sophia met his stare without flinching. Because they were trying to please you. Just trying to do the job. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. The pay is $1,500 a week. Ours are whenever I need you. The rules are non-negotiable. You speak when spoken to. You clean what needs cleaning. You don't ask questions about things that don't concern you. And what exactly concerns me? Is keeping this house exactly as it is, nothing more, nothing less. Sophia looked around the sterile office, at the man who lived like he was allergic to human connection, at the cameras that watched everything but saw nothing. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I need this job more than you need to intimidate me." "So why? Don't we skip the part where you try to scare me off and get straight to the part where I prove you wrong?" For the first time since she'd entered the room, Victor Hale smiled. It wasn't warm, it wasn't kind, but it was real. "We'll see," he said. "Mrs. Henderson will show you to your quarters. Your first shift starts at 6 a.m. Sophia turned to leave. She caught her reflection in one of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind her, Victor was already back to his screens, but she could feel him watching her on the cameras. She was walking into a house that ate people alive, working for a man who'd forgotten what it meant to be human. But Maya needed that surgery, and Sophia had never backed down from a fight in her life. This cold, beautiful prison was about to meet its match. Sophia's room was a study in beige minimalism, tucked away on the mansion's ground floor like an afterthought. Single bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out onto the service entrance. She'd stayed in worse places, but never ones that felt quite so much like a holding cell. She unpacked her few belongings with practiced efficiency. 3 uniforms, practical shoes, and a photo of Maya taken before the medications had stolen the color from her cheeks. Sophia propped it on the dresser where she could see her sister smile every morning. At 5:45 a.m., she stood in the kitchen reviewing Mrs. Henderson's typed instructions. The list was comprehensive enough to run a small hotel. Detailed down to which direction to vacuum north to south, never diagonal, and how many minutes to spend on each task. Rule number 1. Mrs. Henderson appeared beside her like a well-dressed ghost. Mr. Hale's breakfast is prepared at exactly 7 a.m. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee. No variations. Got it. What about rule number 2? Mr. Hale doesn't like to see staff during his morning routine. He'll work the east wing while he's in the west, then switch. Sophia nodded, mentally mapping the mansion's layout. It was like a elaborate dance designed to keep the hired help invisible. In rule number 3, Mrs. Henderson's expression grew colder. Don't get comfortable. This isn't a permanent position for people like you. The dismissal in her voice was crystal clear, but Sophia just smiled. Now, lucky for me, I'm not people like anyone. By 7 a.m., she'd already cleaned 3 bathrooms, dusted 2 unused bedrooms, and reorganized a linen closet that probably contained more thread count than most people saw in a lifetime. The house was beautiful in its sterility, but it felt like a museum where someone had forgotten to install the exhibits. She was polishing the banister when she heard footsteps on the stairs above. Victor descended like he was walking into a board meeting, every movement controlled and purposeful. His gray suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable. He paused when he saw her, and Sophia realized this was the test. Would she scurry away like a startled mouse? Apologize for existing in his sightline? Instead, she continued, polishing, humming softly under her breath. "You're supposed to be in the East Wing," he said. "I am in the East Wing. This is the East Wing staircase. The instructions specifically state that staff should avoid common areas during morning hours." Sophia looked up at him, cloth still moving in steady circles. "The instructions say to avoid being seen." "I'm not hiding, but I'm not exactly throwing a parade either." Something shifted in his expression, too quick to catch. He continued down the stairs without another word. But she noticed he walked a little slower, like he was processing something unexpected. The morning passed in a rhythm of avoidance and efficiency. Sophia tackled each room with the kind of focused intensity that came from years of making the most of limited time. She found herself studying the house as she worked, noting the small details that revealed more than any biography. The kitchen was equipped for elaborate meals, but showed signs of only basic use. The dining room table could seat 12, but was set for 1. Family photos had been replaced with abstract art, but she could see the slightly different paint color where frames used to hang. This wasn't just a house, it was a crime scene, and the victim was whoever Victor Hale used to be. Around noon, she was cleaning the library when she found it. A book left open on the reading table. The pages were worn from handling, the spine cracked from use. It was a collection of poetry, and someone had underlined passages in faded ink. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. She read silently. The marginalia was in a woman's handwriting, delicate script that formed hearts around certain phrases. You're not supposed to be in here. Sophia didn't jump, though her heart rate spiked. She'd been so absorbed in the discovery that she hadn't heard him approach. The schedule said library cleaning at noon, she replied, gently closing the book. Victor stood in the doorway, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely unsettled. His gaze fixed on the poetry book like it was a loaded weapon. That section is off-limits. The schedule didn't mention any off-limit sections. I'm mentioning it now. His voice had gone cold, but underneath the ice, Sophia heard something else. Pain, maybe, or fear. She moved away from the reading table but didn't apologize. Should I add it to the written instructions, or are we operating on a verbal amendment? System, just stay away from it. He turned to leave, then stopped. And don't hum while you work. It's distracting. Distracting from what? You're 3 floors away most of the time. I can hear everything in this house. That sounds exhausting. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Victor turned back to face her fully. They stared at each other across the library, and Sophia realized she'd just crossed a line she hadn't even known existed. I don't pay you to psychoanalyze me, he said. No, you pay me to clean, but observation comes free with the service. Your observations aren't required. Good thing they're not for sale. For a moment, the tension stretched between them like a live wire. Then Victor's mouth curved in what might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth. Lunch will be ready at 1. Leave it outside my office. Any special requirements? Allergies? Foods that make you spontaneously show emotion? This time, his smile was definitely real, even if it only lasted a second. Just food, Ms. Martinez, not miracles. He left her alone in the library, but Sophia found herself staring at the space where he'd stood. For just a moment, she'd seen something crack in his perfectly controlled facade. Something human. She looked back at the poetry book, still sitting where he'd found her with it. Whatever story that book told, whatever memories it held, they were important enough to make Victor Hale forget to be cold. And despite every instinct telling her to leave it alone, Sophia found herself wondering what it would take to see that crack in his armor widen into something that couldn't be sealed back up. Maya's surgery was 8 days away. She just had to last that long. But as she prepared his lunch, adding a small side of fresh fruit that wasn't on his prescribed menu, Sophia realized she might be in more danger than she'd thought. Not from losing her job, from wanting to stay. 3 days in, and Sophia had established her own rhythm. She'd learned that Victor took his coffee at exactly 3 p.m., that he worked until past midnight most nights, and that he watched her on the security monitors more than he probably realized. She'd also learned that the cameras had blind spots. The discovery happened by accident when she was cleaning the second-floor hallway. She dropped her cleaning cloth and chased it into an alcove near the back staircase. She noticed the camera angle couldn't capture this small space. Standing there in that pocket of privacy, Sophia felt like she could breathe for the first time in days. The constant surveillance had been wearing on her more than she'd admitted, even to herself. That afternoon, she was organizing the kitchen pantry when she heard raised voices from Victor's office. Through the intercom system that connected every room, his conversation bled through in fragments. The Singapore deal is non-negotiable, Marcus. Either they meet our terms, or we walk. Victor, you're being unreasonable. This kind of inflexibility is exactly why the board is getting nervous. The board can be nervous all they want. I built this company, and I'll run it as I see fit. Like you run everything else? By pushing away anyone who tries to get close? Silence. Then Victor's voice, colder than Sophia had ever heard it. This conversation is over. The line went dead, and Sophia found herself gripping a can of tomatoes so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She'd heard something in that exchange that made her chest tight with recognition. The same tone Maya used when she was scared but trying to hide it behind anger. That evening, she made a decision that went against every rule Mrs. Henderson had outlined. Instead of leaving Victor's dinner outside his office, she knocked. "Come in." He was standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the city lights. His suit jacket was draped over his chair, sleeves rolled up. And for the first time since she'd met him, he looked less like a corporate titan and more like a man carrying weight that was too heavy for his shoulders. "Your dinner," Sophia said, setting the tray on his desk. "Could have left it outside." "I could have done a lot of things. I chose to bring it in." He turned from the window, and she saw exhaustion written in the lines around his eyes. Was there something else?
Actually, there was.
She moved to the second chair across from his desk and sat down without invitation. Victor's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Make yourself comfortable," he said dryly. "Thanks, I did." Sophia leaned back and studied him. "Rough day? That's not your concern. You're right, but I'm asking anyway." For a moment, she thought he might order her out. Instead, he moved to his desk and sat down across from her, creating a strange parody of a dinner date. "Why?"
Me?
Asked. "Why?" "What? Why are you asking?" "The other housekeepers never asked. They did their jobs and left me alone. Maybe that's why they didn't last." Victor picked up his fork, but didn't eat. "People leave because I make them uncomfortable. I've accepted that. Or maybe people leave because you make yourself comfortable with being alone, and that's scarier than being uncomfortable together." The words hung in the air between them. Sophia watched his face, saw the moment her observation hit home. "You don't know anything about me?" he said quietly. "I know you read poetry in a library you've turned into a shrine. I know you work 8-hour days to avoid going to bed in an empty house. Okay, I know you're angry at the world for taking something away from you, but mostly you're angry at yourself for still being here when she's not." Victor's fork clattered against the plate. "How do you—" "Because I've been there." Sophia's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "When my mom died, I spent 2 years being furious at everyone who got to keep their mothers. I was angry at God, angry at the world, angry at her for leaving me to figure everything out alone. This is different. You are a child. Pain is pain, Mr. Hale. It doesn't come with age requirements." He stared at her, and Sophia saw something shift in his expression.
Ask carefully.
Constructed mask he wore for the world, but something raw and unguarded. "Her name was Evelyn," he said suddenly. "We met in college. She was studying literature, wanted to be a teacher. She said I was too serious, that I needed someone to remind me how to laugh." Sophia waited, sensing that interrupting would shatter whatever courage had prompted this confession. The accident was 3 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. His voice was matter-of-fact, but his hands had clenched into fists. "Shh. Was coming home from a faculty meeting. I was supposed to pick her up, but I had a conference call that ran late." "So you blame yourself?" "I killed her with a conference call about quarterly projections that didn't matter to anyone." "Oh," Sophia said firmly. "A drunk driver killed her. He just happened to be human that night instead of superhuman." Victor looked up sharply. "You don't understand." "I understand that grief makes us stupid. I understand that guilt is easier than accepting that sometimes terrible things happen for no reason at all." She leaned forward. "Is why you think Evelyn would want you to stop living." "How do you know what she would want?" "Because she married you, which means she loved you. And people who love us don't want us to disappear just because they can't be here to see us keep going." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Victor picked up his fork and took a bite of his dinner. "You added cilantro to the rice," he observed. "You noticed." "I notice everything." "I know." That's your problem. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Ms. Martinez? Yeah, tomorrow. Could you skip the psychological analysis and just clean the house? I can try, but I'm not making any promises. As Sophia stood to leave, Victor called her name again. The book you found in the library? It was hers. She used to read to me from it when I couldn't sleep. Sophia paused at the door. Maybe that's why you can't sleep now. You're listening for a voice that's not there, instead of remembering the words she left behind. She left him sitting at his desk, fork halfway to his mouth, staring at nothing and everything. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Sophia realized she'd made a critical error. She'd started caring about Victor Hale as more than just a paycheck. And caring about someone who was determined to stay broken was the most dangerous thing she could do. The next morning brought crisis. Sophia woke to her phone buzzing insistently against the nightstand. Ajay's name flashed on the screen and her heart dropped before she even answered. Soph. Maya's voice was weak, breathless. I'm at the hospital. 15 minutes later, Sophia was pacing the cardiac unit waiting room while doctors ran tests on her sister. Maya's heart condition had worsened overnight, and the surgery that had been scheduled for next week now needed to happen within days. The good news is, we can move her up in the schedule, Dr. Patel explained, his expression carefully neutral. The challenging news is that we'll need the full payment up front. Work insurance pre-authorization for expedited procedures requires how much? Sophia interrupted. $42,000. By Thursday, Sophia's world tilted. Thursday was 3 days away. She'd been working for Victor for less than a week. Had maybe saved $2,000 total and would need a miracle to cover. The rest, I need to make some calls, she managed. But there were no calls to make. She'd exhausted every option, burned through every favor, and stretched every credit limit. The math was brutal and simple. Maya needed surgery and Sophia couldn't provide it. She was sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot, hands shaking as she stared at her bank statement when her phone rang. Ms. Martinez? Victor's voice was crisp, professional. You're 3 hours late. Mrs. Henderson says you didn't call in. I'm sorry, there's been a family emergency, I see. Will you be returning today? Sophia closed her eyes. She needed this job more than ever, but she also needed to be with Maya. The choice felt impossible. I don't know, she admitted. Silence. On the other end, then, where are you, Cedars-Sinai? Wait, my sister, her voice caught. Her heart condition got worse. She needs surgery and I can't afford it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Mr. Hale, you don't need to. The line went dead. Sophia stared at her phone, wondering if the stress had finally made her hallucinate. Victor Hale didn't do emotions, let alone hospital visits for staff members he barely knew. But 18 minutes later, a black Tesla pulled into the parking spot beside her. Victor emerged wearing dark jeans and a white button-down, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Which floor? He asked when he reached her car. Victor, you really don't have to do this. Which floor, Sophia? The use of her first name jolted her. She'd been Ms. Martinez for 6 days straight. Fourth. Cardiac unit. They rode the elevator in silence, and Sophia found herself acutely aware of his presence beside her. Without the barrier of employer and employee, without the mansion's walls between them, he seemed different. Less controlled, more present. Maya was awake when they entered her room, connected to monitors that beeped steadily. She looked tiny in the hospital bed, younger than her 22 years. Maya, this is my employer, Victor Hale, Sophia said, moving to her sister's side. Maya's eyes widened. The Victor Hale? The tech guy? Soph, you didn't tell me you were working for a celebrity? I'm hardly a celebrity, Victor said, but his voice was gentler than Sophia had ever heard it. Are you kidding? You're like the Elon Musk of security systems? I wrote a paper about your company's encryption protocols for my computer science class. Despite everything, Sophia smiled. Maya had always been brilliant, even when she was 2. Sick to show it, you're studying computer science? Victor asked, pulling a chair closer to the bed. When I'm not playing professional patient, I want to work in cybersecurity. Maybe start my own company someday. Maya's eyes lit up despite her obvious exhaustion. Your facial recognition software is incredible. The way you integrated biometric data with behavioral analysis patterns was genius. Sophia watched in amazement as Victor's entire demeanor shifted. He leaned forward, engaging with Maya about algorithms and system vulnerabilities with an enthusiasm she'd never seen from him. The next generation of systems we're developing takes that concept even further, he said. We're looking at predictive modeling that can anticipate security breaches before they happen. Like Minority Report for computer networks, Maya breathed. Exactly like that. They talked for 20 minutes about technology and possibilities, and Sophia saw her sister come alive in a way she hadn't in months. More importantly, she saw Victor smile, really smile, not the cold curve of lips he used as armor. When Maya dozed off, exhausted by the conversation, Victor and Sophia stepped into the hallway. She's remarkable, he said. She's everything. I'm not. Brilliant, optimistic, sees possibilities instead of obstacles. She's everything you are, Victor corrected, just expressed differently. Sophia looked at him sharply. Don't do that. Do what? Be kind. Be human. It makes this whole situation more complicated than it already is. What situation? It's the one where I have to quit your job to take care of her, where I can't afford the surgery that could save? Her life, where I'm about to lose the only family I have left. The words poured out in a rush. So please don't be nice to me right now because I'm barely holding it together as it is. Victor studied her for a long moment. How much do you need? It doesn't matter. I can't borrow money from my employer. That's not how this works. It's not a loan. Sophia felt her world shift again. What? The surgery. I'll pay for it. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. Absolutely not. Why not? Because I don't take charity. Because it changes everything between us. Because I won't be in debt to someone who she stopped herself. Someone who what? Someone who I'm already starting to care about more than I should. The admission hung between them like a confession. Victor's expression went through several changes before settling on something she couldn't quite read. There's another option, he said finally. I'm listening. Maya mentioned wanting to start her own company. What if I offered her a position at Hale Technologies? Full-time, after she recovers, with a signing bonus that happens to cover her medical expenses. Sophia stared at him. You'd hire someone you just met? Hire someone with her talent and passion? The fact that she's your sister is incidental. Is it? Victor met her. Gazed directly. No, it's not. The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. This was dangerous territory, the kind that led to complications neither of them could afford. She'd have to accept the offer herself, Sophia said. Of course, and it has to be legitimate, not some made-up position to help us out. It will. Be legitimate. Need someone to head up our new youth security initiative. Someone who understands both the technology and the generation that will be using it. When they returned to Maya's room, she was awake and looking stronger. Victor presented his offer with the same professionalism he'd use in any business meeting. But Sophia caught the moments when his voice softened, when he emphasized the opportunities rather than the obligations. Maya's eyes filled with tears. When she realized what he was offering, I can't accept charity, she said, echoing her sister's earlier words. It's not charity, Victor replied. It's the best business decision I've made in years. 3 hours later, contracts were signed. Maya was scheduled for surgery the next morning. Sophia found herself alone with Victor in the hospital parking lot as the sun set over Los Angeles. Thank you, she said, the words feeling inadequate. Don't thank me yet. Maya still has to survive working for me long term. She will. She's tougher than she looks. She gets that from her sister. They stood beside their cars, neither seeming ready to leave. The comfortable silence stretched between them until Sophia broke it. This changes things, doesn't it? Everything changes things, Sophia. The question is whether we let the change destroy us or make us stronger. Is that what you did when Evelyn died? Let it make you stronger? Victor was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. No, he said finally. I let it destroy me. I'm still letting it destroy me. But you just saved my sister's life. That doesn't sound like destruction to me. Maybe it's reconstruction. starting over with better materials. When Sophia drove home that night, she realized that somewhere between Maya's hospital room and the parking lot conversation, she'd stopped thinking of Victor as her employer. She'd started thinking of him as the man she was falling in love with. And that realization terrified her more than any financial crisis ever could. Maya's surgery was a success. Sophia spent the night in the hospital chair beside her sister's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest, listening to the strong, regular rhythm of her repaired heart. Her first words were, "Did I get the job? Contingent on recovery and not driving your new boss completely insane," Sophia replied, squeezing her hand. "I can work with those terms." 2 weeks later, Maya was discharged with a clean bill of health and strict orders to take it easy for a month before starting her new position. Sophia returned to work at the mansion, expecting things to go back to normal. Instead, she found that everything had shifted. Victor no longer hid behind cameras and intercom systems. He emerged from his office for lunch, asked about Maya's recovery, and started leaving his library door open when he worked. The poetry book appeared on different tables throughout the house, like he was testing whether it could exist outside its shrine. "You're different," Sophia observed one afternoon, as she organized his desk. "Different how? Less Ice King, more actual human being?" Victor looked up from his laptop. "Is that a professional assessment?" "It's a personal observation. Big difference." "And what's your personal observation telling you?" "In her sorting, that you're scared." "Of what?" "Of the same thing I'm scared of." The admission hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them had been ready to voice. Sophia, Victor said quietly, "Yeah? What are we doing?" It was the question she'd been avoiding for days. The careful dance they'd been performing around growing feelings, the way professional boundaries had blurred into something undefined and dangerous. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I know I don't want to stop doing it." That evening, Victor broke his own rules and joined her in the kitchen while she prepared dinner. He sat at the counter, sleeves rolled up, asking about her day like they were a normal couple in a normal house. "Maya starts orientation on Monday," Sophia said, seasoning the pasta. "She's nervous. She shouldn't be. Marcus has been bragging about our new hire to anyone who'll listen. Your business partner has even met her yet. He's seen her work samples. He says she has an intuitive understanding of user psychology that most programmers never develop." Sophia smiled. She always could read people. Said it came from spending so much time in hospitals, watching how doctors and nurses interacted with patients. "And where did you learn to read people?" "Cleaning houses. See how people live when they think no one's watching? You learn what matters to them, what they're hiding, what they're afraid of." "What am I afraid of?" Victor asked. The question was soft, vulnerable in a way that made Sophia's chest tight. "Being happy?" she said without hesitation. "Because if you let yourself be happy, you have to admit that life goes on, that you can love Evelyn's memory and still build something new." Victor was quiet for a long moment, watching her move around the kitchen with practiced ease. "What if I told you I fired Mrs. Henderson today?" he said suddenly. Sophia nearly dropped the wooden spoon. "What? Why?" "Because she said something about people like you not knowing their place." His jaw tightened. "I told her that people like you were exactly the kind of people I wanted in my house. Victor, I also told her that if she had a problem with me caring about my staff, she could find another position where her employers were appropriately cold and distant." Sophia set down the spoon and turned to face him fully. "Now you fired your house manager because she was rude to me?" "I fired her because she was wrong about you, about what you mean to this house, about what you mean to me." The words hit her like electricity. "What do I mean to you?" Victor stood up, moving around the counter until he was close enough to touch.
"You mean I remember what it feels like to look forward to something?"
"You mean I actually want to come home instead of just existing here? You mean I can think about Evelyn without feeling like I'm drowning?" Sophia's breath caught. "Victor, I know this is complicated. So I know I'm your employer and you need this job and there are a dozen reasons why this is a terrible idea, but I'm falling in love with you and I can't pretend anymore that it's not happening." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Sophia felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she whispered. Being loved? Being loved by someone I could lose. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Sophia, you could lose anyone. You could lose me tomorrow in a car accident, or I could lose you to someone who isn't carrying around 3 years of grief. But we could also have something beautiful. What about Evelyn? Evelyn would want me to be happy? She'd probably like you, actually. You're both stubborn and brilliant and completely unwilling to let me get away with self-pity. Despite everything, Sophia laughed. She sounds like someone I would have wanted to meet. And loving her taught me that life is too short, to waste it being afraid of love. Sophia looked into his eyes, seeing the man who'd emerged from behind the ice-cold mask. So what happens now? Now you tell me whether you're brave enough to take a chance on us. I'm a girl from East LA who talked her way into working for a billionaire to save her sister's life. Of course I'm brave enough, Victor smiled. The first completely unguarded expression she'd ever seen from him. Is that a yes? That's a yes to dinner dates and actual conversations and seeing what happens when we stop pretending this is just about work. In the job, I quit. Victor's eyebrows shot up. You quit? I can't be your girlfriend and your housekeeper. That's a recipe for disaster. Sophia grinned. Besides, Maya's going to need someone to help her navigate her new career. I'm thinking of starting a consulting business. Professional organization for people who have more money than sense. That sounds like a personal attack. The overpriced shoe fits, Victor laughed, a sound that filled the kitchen with warmth the sterile mansion had been missing for years. I love you, Sophia Martinez. I love you too, Victor Hale. But I'm keeping my own apartment until we figure this out. Deal. As long as you promise to have dinner with me tomorrow night, somewhere that's not this kitchen. Counteroffer. You cook dinner for me tomorrow night, here in this kitchen that's about to become a home instead of a showroom. I don't cook, then you better learn fast. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the same kitchen, now filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. Maya was there, healthy and thriving in her new job, arguing with Victor about encryption protocols. While she helped prepare Sunday dinner, the house had changed. The sterile perfection had given way to lived-in comfort. Books were left open on tables. Photos of family and friends occupied the walls. The library had become a reading room again, not a shrine. You know what's funny? Maya said, stealing a piece of bread from the counter. What? Sophia asked. Victor's the one who taught me that security isn't about building walls to keep people out. It's about being strong enough to let the right people in. Sophia looked across the kitchen at Victor, who was attempting to flip pancakes with more enthusiasm than skill. He caught her eye and smiled, flower in his hair and happiness written across his features. Yeah, she said, moving to help him before he burned down the kitchen they'd both learned to call home. He's pretty smart that way. Later that evening, as they sat in the library reading together, Victor looked up from his book. Sophia, thank you. For what? For walking through those gates. For staying when every reasonable person would have left. For teaching me that love doesn't end when someone dies, it just makes room for something new. Sophia closed her book and moved to sit beside him on the couch. Thank you for letting me in, for saving Maya, for showing me that home isn't a place. It's the people who choose to build something together. Even when those people include a formerly emotionally unavailable billionaire, especially then, those are the most interesting projects. Victor pulled her closer, and Sophia realized that this was what happiness felt like. It's not the absence of pain or fear, but the presence of love strong enough to make both bearable. Outside, Los Angeles glittered in the distance, full of people searching for their own version of home. But inside the mansion that had once been a fortress, 2 people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances were writing a love story that proved sometimes the best things in life come from taking chances on broken people who are brave enough to heal together. And in the library, the poetry book lay open to a page that spoke of love that alters not when it alteration finds, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. Some stories end with goodbye. The best ones begin with hello. I'm staying. The end like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.